This story recounts an incident involving a group of children who decided to play hide and seek, and that game led the narrator to experience a horrifying event that would be etched into their memory forever. This tale is titled The Demon's Piece. Before we dive into our scary story, we would like to ask everyone to like and subscribe to support us in continuing to bring you more terrifying tales in the future. The story takes us back to around 1995. At that time, Matt was a first-year middle school student. In those days, there weren't many game shops or internet cafes for kids to hang out at. As a result, after school, children would usually gather to play at school. Matt's school back then was a temple school, meaning the school grounds were within the temple's area. Matt and his friends often engaged in group activities in the evenings, such as playing soccer or hunting birds and fishing, which were common pastimes for kids of that era. The soccer field where Matt and his friends played was located near the temple's cemetery. Due to their familiarity with the surroundings, Matt and his friends didn't feel scared or think much about the cemetery. Until one day in October, as autumn began transitioning into winter, Matt and his friends went to play soccer as usual in the evening. During the winter season, it would get dark earlier than at other times of the year. That day, Matt and his friends played until about 5 or 6 p.m. before stopping, as the air had turned cold. However, instead of heading home as they usually did, the mischievousness typical of kids their age led Matt and his friends to decide to play hide and seek before going home. It wasn't completely dark yet, so they figured they'd play for a while longer. The orange hues of the sunset lit up the sky as Matt and his friends formed a circle to decide who would be the seeker. Eventually, one friend was chosen to seek while the rest, including Matt, went to find hiding spots. As the seeker began counting down, Matt and the others scattered to look for places to hide. While Matt was searching for a spot, a friend named Ty started running after him. Matt tried to tell Ty not to follow him, but Ty wouldn't stop. Frustrated, Matt climbed over the cemetery wall to get away from Ty. His only thought was to avoid being followed. Matt then climbed into a dugout grave, which had been prepared for a burial. Initially, he wasn't worried or scared because he was familiar with the place. While Matt was crouched inside the grave, Ty approached and stood at the entrance, calling out, "Hey, I'm hiding with you." Worried that other friends might see them hiding together, Matt reluctantly let Ty join him. Ty squeezed into the grave and sat behind Matt. The excitement of the game and the adrenaline temporarily made them forget any fear. However, after about 5 minutes of hiding, Matt began to feel uneasy. He sensed that he and Ty were not alone in the grave. Matt's instincts told him that a sinister presence was radiating from behind them. For the first time in his life, he experienced the spine-chilling feeling of being watched. It felt as though someone or something was staring at them from behind. Matt cautiously turned to look over his shoulder and saw Ty feeling around the grave's floor with his hands. The ground was covered with dirt and bits of decayed wood from old coffins. Ty continued to feel around until he found a strange object. It was a small silver orb, roughly the size of a marble. Matt didn't pay much attention, as he was more preoccupied with the unsettling atmosphere. Ty picked up the mysterious object, remarking that it looked beautiful, and slipped it into his pocket. As Matt watched Ty with curiosity, wondering what he was doing, he suddenly felt an overwhelming sense of discomfort. It was as if the cramped space of the grave was now filled with people pressing against him. But the thrill of the game overshadowed his fear, and Matt decided to stay hidden in the grave. About 10 minutes passed, and Matt began to wonder why he hadn't heard any of his friends walking around nearby searching for them. Maybe his hiding spot was too good? Despite his curiosity, Matt stayed in the grave for a little while longer. Suddenly, a strange noise broke the silence. It sounded like someone exhaling heavily through their mouth. Out of instinct, Matt turned around to see what it was. What he saw was Ty sitting behind him, pale and visibly frightened. Already uneasy, the sight of Ty's expression spiked Matt's fear. Without a second thought, Matt scrambled out of the grave and ran as fast as he could, not daring to look back. Ty followed close behind, fleeing alongside him. When Matt finally stopped and looked down at himself, he realized that he was covered in dirt from the grave. The two of them ran until they reached the soccer field, only to find that all their other friends were gone. Matt assumed the others must have gone home. He turned to Ty and asked, "Where are you staying tonight?" Ty responded that he wanted to stay over at Matt's house, something Ty often did. At that time, Matt lived in a countryside home with his grandparents. His grandparents adored children, and Matt's grandfather had even built him a treehouse as a gift. Matt used it as his bedroom. Around 7 p.m., Matt and Ty returned home. Matt's grandmother noticed how dirty they were and asked what they had been up to. Matt lied, saying they had gotten dirty while playing soccer, as he was afraid his grandmother would scold him if she knew the truth about their graveyard escapades. After cleaning up and eating dinner, Matt and Ty climbed up to the treehouse to sleep. Matt distinctly remembers that Ty refused to sleep that night. Instead, Ty sat hugging his knees, silently staring at Matt the entire night. Ty didn't say a single word, which Matt found odd, but Matt thought his friend might just be playing a prank, so he didn't pay much attention and fell asleep. The next morning, Ty's mother came to pick him up and take him home. The weekend passed without incident, but on Monday morning, Matt went to school and encountered something unusual. As he was walking into the school, he noticed Ty walking alongside the school's fence. The fence had vegetable plants growing next to it, and Ty was dragging his hand along them as he walked. Then, to Matt's shock, Ty began plucking vegetables straight from the plants. Cucumbers, even chili peppers, and stuffing them into his mouth, eating them raw with a strange ferocity. When they got to the classroom, Matt noticed more unusual behavior from Ty. Normally, Ty was cheerful and sociable, but that day he didn't speak to anyone. When he looked at their classmates, it was as if he didn't recognize them at all. Concerned, Matt approached Ty to greet him, but Ty didn't respond or even acknowledge him. Matt assumed Ty must have had some problems at home, which could explain his odd behavior. After school, when Matt's group invited Ty to play soccer, Ty refused, saying he was tired. Matt didn't press further and watched Ty head home alone. The next morning, while Matt was buying snacks at the school store, the storekeeper, a woman who knew Matt well, asked him, "Hey Matt, did Ty stay at your house last night?" Matt replied that Ty hadn't. The storekeeper then told him something strange. She explained that late the previous night, around 10 or 11 p.m., she had seen Ty wandering near the school. She described Ty's movements as odd, His walking looked more like dancing. In those days, 10 or 11 p.m. was considered extremely late, and it was unheard of for an 11-year-old to be out alone at that hour. Hearing this, Matt felt that Ty's behavior was getting stranger by the day. He decided to tell their homeroom teacher about it and asked the teacher to check on Ty. When the teacher spoke with Ty, it became clear that something was seriously wrong. Ty had grown increasingly aggressive and even used vulgar language to insult the teacher. After about 2 to 3 days, Ty's strange behavior persisted. The people in the neighborhood began to talk about how odd Ty was acting lately. Some said they saw him dancing in the middle of the night, while others claimed they saw an elderly person holding Ty's hand and leading him out of his house. These people assumed the elder must be a relative of Ty's. One morning, Matt noticed that Ty didn't show up at school, which made him worry that something might have happened to his friend. After school that day, when Matt got home, his grandfather told him that Ty's mother had come by. His grandfather then asked if Ty had been acting aggressively lately. Matt recounted Ty's bizarre behavior, and his grandfather shared what Ty's mother had told him. Ty had disappeared from home the night before, and no one knew where he was. What's more, Ty's mother revealed that Ty had killed all their pet cats by strangling them with a rope and hanging them on the clothesline. The following evening, Matt and his friends gathered at the soccer field, and he brought up Ty's behavior in their conversation. Suddenly, Ty appeared from out of nowhere. Matt called out, "Hey Ty, where have you been? Your mom's looking for you." Ty looked disheveled and dirty. His clothes were filthy, and his whole body was covered in grime. He shouted back, "I'm not going back. That's not my home. My home is here." Concerned, Matt approached Ty and tried to convince him to go back home, even attempting to drag him back. But Ty resisted and ran off to hide in the same grave where they had played hide and seek before. Sensing something was seriously wrong, Matt ran to get the temple caretaker, who was an elderly man well respected in the community. When the caretaker arrived, he forcibly pulled Ty out of the grave. Ty, however, bolted from the spot with an unnatural speed, far faster than any ordinary person. Matt and his friends tried to chase after him, but Ty outran them with ease. Matt eventually gave up the chase and decided to call Ty's mother from a landline, informing her that they had seen Ty at the temple, but that he had run off. Around 9 p.m., as Matt was trying to sleep in his treehouse, he woke to the sound of something. When he opened the door to check, he saw Ty trying to climb into the treehouse. "Ty, are you staying here tonight?" Matt asked. Ty replied, "Can I sleep here tonight? I'm scared." Hearing this, Matt felt sorry for his friend and let him stay. He got some food and water for Ty before they both lay down to sleep. At about 10 p.m., while Matt was lying with his back to Ty, he thought he heard Ty get up and start walking. The sound of heavy footsteps filled the treehouse, but Matt didn't turn around. He then heard the door to the treehouse open, which made him realize something odd. To get down from the treehouse, one had to climb a vertical ladder, yet he hadn't heard any sounds of climbing. This realization sent a chill down his spine, and he quickly turned to check. To his shock, Ty was still lying where he had been before, seemingly asleep. Matt admitted to himself that he no longer trusted Ty, who now felt like a stranger. Trying to dismiss the incident, He convinced himself it was just his imagination and tried to fall asleep. But then he heard the treehouse door open again. This time, as he cautiously opened his eyes, he saw an old man slowly stepping into the room. The man's heavy footsteps echoed as he approached the bed. The old man sat astride Ty, and Matt heard the same eerie sound he had heard when they played hide and seek in the graveyard. A deep, raspy exhalation. Matt's entire body froze with fear, but adrenaline soon took over. He bolted upright from the bed, ran to the door, and leapt out of the treehouse, falling to the ground below. The fall left Matt injured, but in his panic, he barely noticed. He screamed at the top of his lungs, so loudly that his grandfather came running out to see what was happening. At that moment, Matt saw his grandfather climb up to wake Ty, who was sleeping in the treehouse. Ty groggily woke up, and Matt's grandfather gently said to him, "Ty, go home, son. This isn't your home." Ty climbed down from the treehouse without saying a word and walked away. In that instant, Matt didn't dare say a single word to Ty. He was still shaken from what he had seen earlier. The next morning, around 9 or 10 a.m., Ty's mother came to Matt's house. She started questioning him, saying, "Matt, don't take this the wrong way, but tell me the truth. What exactly were you kids playing?" Matt decided to tell her everything about the day they went to play hide and seek. When Ty's mother heard the story, she scolded Matt, as well as his grandparents, harshly. Afterward, she asked Matt to come to her house to check on Ty, saying, "Ty's condition has gotten worse." When Matt arrived at Ty's house, he went up to see his friend, who was lying in his room. Ty appeared to be clutching something tightly in his hand. Matt suddenly remembered that on the day they were in the crematorium, Ty had picked up a shiny silver object and put it in his pocket. With a mix of courage and fear, Matt approached his friend to check on him. Ty was lying there trembling, unconscious. Matt decided to pry open Ty's hand, which was tightly gripping something. Everyone present helped him open Ty's hand, and when they finally managed to do so, they saw what Ty had been holding. It was an old-fashioned denture made of some kind of metal. Matt guessed it must have been a part of the remains of an older corpse, long buried and decomposed in the soil over decades. Seeing the object, everyone there was struck with fear and unease. No one knew what to do, so they decided to invite the abbot from the temple, believing that he might be able to help Ty. But then, something horrifying happened. Right after they made this decision, Ty suddenly spoke up, saying, "There's no need to go find anyone. Soon, I'll eat this kid alive." Hearing this, Matt's grandfather quickly grabbed Matt and dragged him out of the room. Everyone else followed, slamming the door shut behind them. As the door was about to close, Matt glanced back at Ty, who was lying on the bed. What he saw was terrifying. Ty had curled up and was staring directly at him. Slowly, Ty's tongue began to extend outward, unnaturally long, until it reached his navel. Matt burst into tears, overwhelmed by fear. A while later, the abbot arrived at Ty's house. Matt watched as the monk knocked on the bedroom door 3 times, saying, "Who's in there? Please open the door." But there was only silence, no response came. Seeing this, everyone tried to open the door but found it locked from the inside. Ty's mother fetched the key and unlocked the door. As she was unlocking it, the abbot said, "I'm coming in now." When the door finally opened, they all saw Tai lying lifeless on the bed. His eyes were wide open, his mouth agape as if he had died from extreme shock. Tai's jaw appeared to have been violently pulled down to his chest, as though someone had forcibly torn his mouth apart to leave him in that state. 2 or 3 days later, Tai's funeral was held at the same temple where they had played hide and seek. After the burial ceremony, Matt decided to ordain as a novice monk at the temple. On his first night as a monk, Matt couldn't sleep. Something compelled him to take a walk near the cemetery. As he wandered, he suddenly saw the same old man who had crouched over Tai in the treehouse that night. However, what Matt felt wasn't fear. He felt overwhelming sadness for his friend. 7 days later, Matt returned home and asked his grandfather a question that had been weighing on his mind. "Grandpa, was it a ghost that caused all this to happen to Tai?" His grandfather replied, "No, it wasn't a ghost. It was a demon. About 10 years ago, someone in the village passed away. A person known to practice dark magic and black arts. After that person was buried, their grave eventually became mixed with the remains of others buried on top of it over time. It must have been fate that led Tai to pick up a part of that person's body, which had not fully decomposed. That's what caused all this tragedy." His grandfather explained further, people who practice such dark arts, when they die, become demons that feed on the souls of weak and vulnerable individuals who come near them. They continue to devour souls endlessly. After hearing Matt's story, it left me with a thought. Sometimes, taking something that doesn't belong to you can bring unimaginable misfortune. What do you think? Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. Before we part ways today, don't forget to like and follow to support us in sharing more spine-chilling stories. And if you're someone who enjoys consuming haunting tales and eerie experiences, let us be part of bringing those thrills to you.